Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Hankin, and this is the Stoop Storytelling Series at the beautiful Baltimore Museum of Industry. Tonight, our show is Invisible Labor, and we are going to start off with our featured musician, Queen Earth. And after we hear Queen Earth, we are going to hear 7 stories on the theme of invisible labor. So tuck in, get a blanket from your couch at home while we do what we used to do in ye olden pre-pandemic times. Share some stories and some music.
I want something so bad. Ain't got no money, ain't got no seeds. I wanna run so bad. Ain't got no pillow to rest my head, no ground to plant my feet. I dream in concrete things, heart open, eyes closed, meditating. I need to know these things are mine, and I'm not crazy in the space between in the space between universe. Don't make me crazy like mine, mother. Universe, don't make me angry like my father. Make me wealthy, make me whole, make me rich. I'm so close, don't wanna die poor in the space between in the space between. I wanna love more, feel us the possibility of giving up or losing out on the only things I think about, and I'm so close in the space between in the space between in the space between ooh oh in the space between. Feels weird to be playing out with humans in one room. And I wrote this song. It's a gospel song called Collared, because preachers wear a collar around their neck. Enslaved people, at least my ancestors, tilled the earth and pulled collard greens from the ground. And if someone didn't want an enslaved person to run away, they would put a collar around their neck. And it would ring bells. And I always say that if I had one around my neck, the last sound I would hear would be that bell ringing, because I'd be running. I don't like to run. But this is a gospel song I wrote called Collared. And the last time I played it was at my mom's funeral, so I'm gonna send it up to her. I stand before my Maker. They are between me and the darkness, always before and after. I stand between heaven and earth, roots planted. And when they called, I wasn't afraid to answer. Collared, collared, I wasn't afraid. Collared, collared, I kneel to pray, plant these seeds of faith, lessons, lessons, dirt on my face. I kneel between the hardest ground, softest dirt, no empty pursuits, plenty of food, harvest, harvest, collared, collared, ooh, collared, collared, blood of queens, blood of slaves, out of the darkness, break these chains. Blood of queens, blood of slaves, out of the darkness, break these chains. Collared, collared, I wasn't afraid. Collared, collared, I wasn't afraid.
All right, that was Queen Earth, who got it started off in an amazing way. We are so grateful that you are here tonight with us, and we're so grateful that you are here at home or wherever you are. I don't know where you are. You could be in the car, but somehow you're engaging with us, and we appreciate that as well. So in case you don't know where you are right now listening or watching Invisible Labor, which is a Stoop storytelling show at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. And our first storyteller for the evening is Jonathan Jacobs, who is a freelance actor in the Baltimore theater community. He's been in a bunch of productions with Chesapeake Shakespeare or Single Carrot, Art Centric. If you happen to be a Stoop Storytelling Series fan who also does casting, Jonathan would like for you to know that he is available. He's very busy, but he is available. So if you like what you see tonight, you just have to email us to get to him. All right? So here's Jonathan Jacobs.
Hi. I have been an actor for pretty much all my life, and like a lot of actors, one of the first things that really inspired me to get into it was superheroes. Watching superhero movies. I mean, the first role that any actor plays is Superman with a cape tied around his neck. And so I was very excited when my first professional acting opportunity, right as I was getting ready to graduate from college, was on an episode of House of Cards here in Baltimore, directed by Joel Schumacher. Now, if you don't know Joel Schumacher's name, you probably know his work. He did The Lost Boys, he did A Time to Kill, a bunch of other stuff, but he's probably best known for the amazing and gloriously cheesy mid-90s Batman movies. I'm talking about, Batman and Robin, Batman Returns, Dayglow costumes and bat nipples and Jim Carrey and Uma Thurman just hamming it up. I mean, they're not good movies, but they're great in their own way. So I was hired to be an extra on this episode of House of Cards that he was directing. And if you've never been an extra, it's not exactly glamorous work. You have to stand for long hours at a time. You're kind of herded around like cattle. And if you're lucky, you get fed pretty well, but you have to wait before the important people eat. I was lucky, though, that I got chosen to be what's called a featured extra, which is like a slight upgrade from being a background extra. They don't have to pay you anymore because you don't have lines, but you're at least kind of involved in the central action of the scene, and your face gets seen for, less than a fleeting amount of time. So anyway, this particular episode of House of Cards was about protesters, and we were sort of the initial wave of protesters. And so the scene that we were in was sort of the initial wave of protesters showing up. And so there was a principal actor named Al who was kind of leading us, and we were filming right outside the Peabody. And the idea was a truck would pull up as we were marching down this alleyway. We would come down this alleyway, truck would pull up, and there'd be a bunch of protest signs in the back of the truck. And so Al, the principal actor, would grab all the signs and start giving them out to us like he's kind of barking orders at us. So we do a couple takes of this. We do like a rehearsal take and a couple on film, and it's just not working. We march down the alley and Al's grabbing the signs, but he's kind of fumbling with them. It's awkward. I just think they didn't anticipate how awkward it would be to have all these signs. So I see that there's kind of some frustration. And so naively, I turn to one of my fellow background actors, and under my breath, I kind of say, I don't know why he doesn't just hop on the truck bed and hand him out from there as opposed to, doing what he's doing now. And so Al comes back, and sure enough, that actor's like, hey, Al, why don't you get up on the truck bed? And I was like, crap. And so Al says, what? And he points to me like, it was his idea. And I was like, well, I just thought it would be easier for you, and maybe it would look better if you hopped up on the truck bed, pulled the signs out, and handed them from there. And he says, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me go talk to Joel. So he goes and talks to Joel Schumacher, and he comes back and he says, yeah, Joel likes the idea, but I have to hit my mark over here. So he wants you to get up on the truck bed and hand out the signs to everybody. I was like mortified. Like, one of the central rules that you learn as an actor is to kind of stay in your lane, let directors direct and you act. But it's Joel Schumacher, if he says jump, I say how high. So I do it. I march down that alleyway. I hop up on that truck bed like a union boss, and I'm just handing out signs like I own the place, right? So we do a few takes like that, and I guess Joel must have come to his senses and realized, like, okay, maybe I should have the principal actor be the one doing this, which I was kind of relieved, because I didn't want them to think I had sort of elbowed my way into being the focal point of this shot. So we switch it up, and Al says, okay, I'm going to be on the truck bed, but you're my right-hand man. So I'm going to hand you all the signs, and then you hand them out to everybody. So we do maybe 1 or 2 more takes of that, and then we're done. And no offense to Joel Schumacher, but if you look at the scene as it is, like, I kind of deserve an assistant director credit, because like I'm partially responsible for the staging of this shot. Anyway, no big deal. The best part of this story is the next day. This was like a 3 or 4 day shoot. And after we had the smaller protest scene, the next day was like, like a bigger protest with like hundreds of people. And so we have like, dozens of background extras lined up to be in this big protest scene. And Joel Schumacher comes walking down the line of actors, and he's saying hello to everybody. And he gets to me, and we make eye contact, and he gives me a little wave, and I wave back, and he keeps walking. But maybe 5 seconds later, I get a tap on my shoulder, and I turn, and it's Joel Schumacher. And he goes, were you the actor who stood up on that truck bed yesterday? And I said, yes, I was. And he said, you were great. And I said, gosh, Mr. Schumacher, thank you so much. This is my first time on a professional film set. I've been following your career since I was a kid, and it's just an honor to take direction from you. And he goes, oh, please, I'm just a kid who started in the costume department and got lucky. Follow your dreams, and you'll do great. And I was on cloud 9. I went and called my dad, and I was like, the director of Batman and Robin just told me to follow my dreams. And I thought about this story recently because Joel Schumacher sadly passed away. And I was thinking about why it impacted me so much. And the thing that struck me is that he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to come and say hello to all the extras. He didn't have to take my idea and run with it. But Joel Schumacher never forgot where he came from, right? He started in the costume shop, and it seemed like he never lost sight of, at one point he was where I was. He remembered what it was like to be on your first job and to follow a dream. And I'll never forget that kindness, that he took the time out of his day to stop and tell somebody that they were exactly where they needed to be and to keep going. So thank you, Joel, and Team Bat Nipple forever.
Thank you. Our next storyteller is Wolf Bindu, and she is a healer who walks with 8 medicine bags. She uses yoga and minerals and art to teach, heal, and assist people. So please welcome Wolf.
A woman came to my door one day. She was ailing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. People come to my door. I'm a healer. I carry 8 medicine bags. I'm well trained in all kinds of energetic arts. And I was curious what was her problem. So I began her assessment, and while she was talking to me, she explained that she was working with a shaman. I was curious about this shaman. I had heard about him, and I asked if I could have his phone number so maybe we could work collaboratively and support this woman through her healing journey. I did call after she gave me the number, and I made an appointment to meet with this man. I drove out to a very unusual part of the country, and I arrived on a very unusual compound, and I knocked on the door, and I waited to be let in. I was brought into the room by one of his followers, and I was indicated to sit in a particular chair, and I just sat there for quite a long time, not sure what was going on. And eventually they said, go there. So I went into this smaller room, and there was a man sitting on the floor. He never looked at me. He was wearing a fedora hat. He was dark-skinned. He had lots of gold chains and medallions around his neck. He was puffing away and throwing some beads. I waited patiently while he finished throwing these beads, and then he inquired why had I come. And I explained to him that I had come because I wanted to work collaboratively and support this woman, and I knew he had been working with her. And he said, well, we might be able to do that, but first you have to be cleared. So I agreed to whatever this clearance might be, and I was slightly curious anyway. I'm a kind of curious cat. And I thought, okay, I will go through this experience. This is a short period of time, but a very intense period of time, about 5-6 months. And I began to undergo some very unusual things. And I had occasion to be a little concerned and began to wonder whether or not our paths were quite similar. And we weren't yet working with this woman. However, he did ask me one day, would I like to work with him and be trained by him because I could become a better healer? And I indicated that I thought and felt I was already quite an effective healer. And he said that many of the things that I did were not allowable for women to do. And I said, well, I have studied and trained all over the world and taught, and no one has objected to teaching me as a woman. And so I'm going to resist further training from you. And then at some point in time, he invited me out to his home to work with his ailing son. This was his favorite son. And he and his wife were leaving, but he left me under the eyes of all of these other followers. I went into the kitchen and I went through their meager supplies, and I mixed up poultices and teas and some balms and salves and applied them regularly and sweat his son. And his son did recover. I didn't realize that this was going to be a problem for me, having successfully shown him what I could do, and I was excited to share what I had done. Shortly later, a command came, and it was basically I had to crawl on my knees and get to him, and it was like, uh-oh, I don't know what that means. I came to the compound again, and I was shown into the sitting room again, and I had my little basket of things that you give always to a shaman. And they took me into the really scary initiation room, where there were lots of dead animals and guns and knives and all kinds of images and some really huge statues. And he was sitting in the corner puffing on that cigar, throwing those beads. Now, I know by now what those beads mean, if it's a yes or a no, but I don't know what the question is. But I have a sense of foreboding, and I give him my gifts. And he takes those gifts and he flings them across the room and he goes, I don't want anything from you. And like, uh-oh. And I'm sitting on the chair and he's throwing those beads. And then I look right across from me on the wall was a dead bird with a knife in its heart, bleeding all over my name, and my name written in blood. And he looks at me for one moment and he says, you've been stealing souls. And I laughed because I thought he was making a joke, but he wasn't making a joke. And he got really Richter and frozen hard. And he said, it's very serious. You've been stealing souls and you'll have to do a lot of work to undo that. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I absolutely am not stealing souls. That's not my business. My business is to heal and to teach. And I don't do those kinds of things. And he said, you have 3 days to make up your mind. And I said, well, I cannot support it. I've taught and trained and healed people all over this world. There's no way I'm bringing them all back from all these different parts to you. I said, I really respect your work. However, I have felt for some time that you and I walk different paths. I walk with love and a sense of returning and restoration of healing to the person. You walk with a lot of power, a lot of control, and it's based on fear. And I do respect it, but I don't think we can continue walking. There was this freeze in the room. And he picked up his gun and he said, get her the hell out of here before I kill her. And I shook and I stood there and I walked up to the door and I stood at the door and I said, for all those who can see me, for all those who can hear me, I stand for love and healing. And for all those who I cannot see, for all those who I cannot hear, but you can see me and you can hear me, I stand for love and for healing. And he said, get her out of here before I kill her. I walked to the door and I got in my car and I left. I thought of what Martin Luther King had pointed out once. He said, if a person hasn't discovered what they will die for, then they're not fit to live. I'm fit.
Right, thank you, Wolf. That was an amazing story about our current president. So, just kidding. That's just a joke. It wasn't about Donald Trump, although it really could have been. Let's be honest. Again, I'm just joking. I kid. Okay, so our next storyteller is Helman Karzai. So he is the owner of Tapas Teatro in Station North, which is a delicious restaurant that is still open. They serve drinks out on the beautiful patio on Charles Street, and just like this specific kind of breaded cheese thing. It's like a croquette. Anyway, it's absolutely delicious. And his namesake is for the Helmand restaurant, which is also on Charles Street, and it's been their beloved institution of Afghani food. And he is the husband to a lovely woman, and they have a beautiful daughter and a pit bull. He's a lifelong Orioles fan, and he's going to share with you his story tonight. So please welcome Helmand.
So I grew up in a restaurant family. My father's been in the restaurant business pretty much his entire adult life. And I can remember him telling me when I was young, never get into the restaurant business. You'll never see your family. And in middle school, I started bussing tables at the Helmand. And aside from a brief period in college when I was a line cook at Bill Bateman's, I've stayed in the family restaurant, in the family business my whole life. And I loved it. I love the energy of a restaurant. I love the camaraderie you have with the people you work with. I love I love talking to guests. I love them, I love that interaction with guests. I love the energy. I love the social aspect of it. It's brought me a love of food. It's brought me a love of wine that's really become one of my life's biggest passions. But, along with all of that, the restaurant business has this crazy schedule. You're sometimes in at 1 or 2 in the afternoon and you're not done till 2 or 3 in the morning. Weekends, forget about it. If you better be a good friend if I'm going to your wedding on a weekend. I got married on a Tuesday, and so this kind of schedule, it really, it's with that kind of grueling schedule. It goes quick. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and then it gets to a point where I now have a family, and my daughter was born about 1.5 years ago, and other than the 2 weeks or so after she was born, I kind of jumped right back into that grueling schedule. That's until March 16th, whenever governor closed restaurants for indoor dining. And then I had all this time. And I was with my family the whole time. I was there when my daughter woke up in the morning. I was there whenever she went to bed at night. And it was time I never would have had before. So there was that aspect to it. But it also, like, at the same time, I'm also having this kind of anxiety about what's going to happen to our family business. But at the same time thinking, what the heck were we doing, like, working like that? Like, I'm getting to enjoy this time. And is this all really worth it, keeping up that schedule? And I just kind of got a little bit maybe disillusioned with the restaurant business a little bit. And then whenever we were allowed to open for carryout, we did that. But carryout, there's no energy in carryout, you know. There's no interaction. There's no personal interactions with carryout. There's no camaraderie with the people you work with in carryout. And it kind of just like made me go deeper into that hole of, man, what are we doing here? And then it came to a point where we realized that one of our restaurants, Pen and Quill, wasn't going to make it through this pandemic. And we decided it was best to just close it. And it wasn't emotional for me at all at that point. It was, you know, it was a business decision. This is what we have to do. And you know, when you're closing a restaurant, it's a whole lot of work. There's lots of cleaning, lots of getting rid of perishables, figuring out where you're taking all this stuff, selling off some equipment. And then it came time for me to pack up the wine cellar there. And 800 to 1,000 bottles, and I did it mostly by myself. And as I'm sitting there, like, packing up these bottles, I knew what I was going to do with some of them. I can use some of these at this restaurant. Oh, I can use some of these at this place. Oh, these big name Italian wines, somebody will buy those. I know somebody will buy those. Oh, these French Burgundies, somebody will buy those. But then I got to these other wines, these kind of like weird, esoteric, you know, a mixed case of orange wines from Italy, 2 cases of American Gamay, a grape from Beaujolais that's got a checkered past here in the States, a Pinot Noir from Slovenia, all wines that I had a whole bunch of passion for. But I just didn't know how could I, nobody's going to buy these. And then it dawned on me, like, that's the part that I've been missing through this whole thing, is this, for me to feel passionate and excited about something, and then passing that on to both the staff and guests that come through that door to make them equally passionate about it, and let them enjoy it, and kind of share that excitement with me. I don't know. I think I really miss the human interaction, and I really can't wait till we get back to somewhat normal.
Thank you so much. Our next storyteller has chosen to remain anonymous, and you will understand why when you hear her story. She's someone who believes in the power of storytelling and really believes in the issues that this story raises.
So the question is, how did I get into this line of work? And I would say that I arrived at a point in my life where my marriage had ended and I was looking to take some risk. I was transplanted from the Midwest, and in the Midwest, we don't have a wild child period. We don't have a time where you get crazy, get drunk every night. You don't do that. Not really, unless you're kind of like really covert about it. And I had never really enjoyed, you know, drinking tons of alcohol, or had never tried drugs. My only vice is profanity, which I really love. But there was a time after realizing that marriage was not a fairy tale that I was kind of interested in taking some risks. I was interested in a delayed moratorium, if you will, a delayed childhood, a delayed time where I can just be like, you know what, I'm tired of the rules. I can return to them at any time. And so this was a time in my life when I wanted to take risk. It was also a time in my life where I was having issues finding gainful employment. So I started perusing Craigslist, the gigs section. And you read the listings and you can figure out what they're about, right? But I read this one listing and it read differently than any other listing. And I'm kind of a wordsmith. I'm really good with reading people and really good with finding what are they nuancing about? What is it really about? And so I called on this one ad and I couldn't really believe it, which was actually interesting why I don't really tell this story to anybody because they don't really believe me. So it was essentially a non-sexual escort service. And I really was like, yeah, right. So I didn't really believe it, but the woman on the other end of the line was a woman like me. When she spoke, I believed her because I'm a specific type of person. My personality type under Myers-Briggs is 0.5% of the population. But if you're a man, you're 5% of the population with that personality type. But my personality as a woman is 0.5%. So when I talked to her, I said, she's a woman just like me. When she says this is what it is, that's exactly what she means. And I said, all right, I'll bite because the money was too good. So basically, every night between 7 and 9 p.m., I was officially on call. And I would work until about 3 a.m., maybe if the work was good and everybody was calling and everything was good, would work until 6 a.m. So, and I often was pretty hungry for the money. So the gig is that my booker, Casey, basically she interviewed 200 girls before she found me. And she knew that I could do the work because it took a certain type of person to do this work. So she talked to men all day, booking them for my night. And she was pretending to be me, but I didn't have to talk to them until I got to the room. And the ads that they were responding to were on Backpage. I had 3 wigs in the back of my car, redhead, brunette, and blonde. And so I would get a text and it would tell me who I was. So when I was blonde, I was Kimmy. It would tell me the number of the hotel. I called the hotel and asked them for their address. And then I would expected to be there within 30 minutes. The gig is that you go in, I call Casey outside when I'm parked, I walk straight in and I call her right from the room. If there is any delay, she calls the room like that. So when I get in the room, they've already been prepped, they already know the gig. If at any point in the booking process, they have mentioned anything illegal, she hangs up on them right away. And so what I presume is their presumption is that we can't talk about it, but it's gonna happen. And what we basically are saying, it's never gonna happen. So that confusion is where my job essentially would lie. So when I get in, I collect payment, it's $200 for the hour, and then I'm very nice and I ask for an upsell, but an extra hour would only be $100 more. So sometimes I'm collecting $300. Sometimes they're paying for the whole night. Once they figure out that nothing is going to happen, oftentimes the clients are embarrassed and they just send me home. And they just go, you can go. Sometimes I just sit there and watch TV. But anytime, the client's like, why don't you sit here on the bed with me? I'm fine, thank you. You're really pushing boundaries. I should probably call my roommate. That's who Casey is. She's my roommate. I check in with her. And if ever came to terms that there was an issue, she would put them in their place. Unless in some situation I was not allowed to call. So I'd like to talk to you about one night in particular where I was detained by the FBI. And it was a night just like every other. So I got a call for a hotel in DC. So I, drive like a bat out of hell, and I'm getting down to DC as fast as I can. I get the call outside, let her know I'm here, walk in really fast with a push-up bra that gives me 2 extra sizes, got my taser, got my phone, got my room for money, because when they hand me cash, that's where I put it because they're not gonna take it back. And my recorder, because I record every session. And so in the elevator, click, turn it on, Boom, everything's good. Get to the room, and I walk in, and I'm walking straight into the room, and 3 other people come out of the bathroom. So basically, those were local PD from DC, but there was an FBI agent there. I had just done leg day at the gym, so they're telling me, sit on the bed. I'm like, I can't sit down. I can't. And they keep thinking I'm gonna run out of the room, and I'm a tall person, so they probably think I might be able to get out of the room. So they handcuff me, and they make me sit on the bed. And I let them know, I have to call my roommate, I have to check in, or they're gonna call and they're gonna, I can't say they're gonna send police because these are the police, so it's not a threat. Anyways, I just let them know, she's not gonna stop calling. So you're gonna have to pick up and tell her something. So there's a female detective or a female cop. She goes to pick up the phone. The moment the phone is about an inch above the receiver, I shout, I'm handcuffed on the bed, there's police. And that female cop goes to pretend to grab the rest of the receiver like she's gonna hit me in the face. And I just look her dead in the eye and I go, wow, you must not like your job because you're not gonna have it for very long. I just left it at that. Now, was I mouthing off? Yeah, mouthing off to the police, probably not a good idea. I was in a risky point in my life, so this was how I chose to take the risk. Not super smart, but neither are people who get drunk every night and whatever. We all go through that wild phase. So basically, Casey now knows the situation and what's going on. So Casey does keep calling those officers. Because I'm recording, I let them know, I'm carrying a digital recording device. I start reading off badge numbers and descriptions and height and demographics, and I do it in a mean way. Paunchy white male with a big gut, saggy pants, disgusting looking, sweating and balding. Yeah, badge number 64669. It's an unfortunate number for this one. Anyway, so a little embarrassing for them, but also keeping them in check, like you're detaining me against my will. So I've also been rehearsed that when you're being held by somebody, security, police, you let them know I've done nothing wrong, I'm being detained against my will, and I would like to go. Because if you're not under arrest, you are allowed to go. And you can repeatedly say this phrase, and technically, as a citizen, you're allowed to be let go. So I repeatedly say that. They want my name and my date of birth, so they run my information. I have a clean record, never done anything wrong, but you never know if they're gonna try to put something on your record. Suspicious person, she's been seen, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they do shady stuff. So I don't know if there's any flags or anything like that, but I'm completely clean. In the end, they also try to take my picture. So security personnel at certain hotels, if they think you're an escort, they will try to take your picture. So every time they keep trying to get me to raise my head, and I have a really long blonde wig on, so I'm just like this. So every time they try to get me to raise my head, I just screw up my face crazy, so that I'm not recognizable. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you don't get to take my picture, You don't get to do that. And I'm not gonna allow you to treat me that way. I don't know if you think you're Vice or somebody else, and I don't know if you're used to women just, allowing you to do whatever. It's not gonna happen with me. So, after about, 20, 30 minutes, I am released because they've run my record and we know that I have done nothing wrong. I have no record. There's no proof of anything. And I essentially have never done anything wrong with a client. It's always been, spending time. So in that time, basically they've released me. When I get back on the phone with Casey and I'm driving away, she has said that she looked it up and she said that there's a Operation Cross Country that is happening with the FBI and they're trying to rescue people from human trafficking circles. But I was not being trafficked. I did not need rescuing. I was working and I was spending time with clients to the tune of $80,000 a year. And I only ended that job because after 3 years, Backpage was taken down and we didn't have a way to put our ads out there like we used to do. That's my story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anonymous. That was a badass story. All right, so we're going to hear another song from Queen Earth, who is a singer, songwriter, and creative professional. Queen Earth has released several albums of original music, solo projects, instrumentals, and musical collaboration. She travels with her educational concert, Queer Core, Behind the Music, to share songwriting stories for LGBTQ audiences and allies. Please welcome Queen Earth.
Thank you. This is the first public outing I've had. I remember my last show before the pandemic. I was in Towson with a close friend. And I miss open mics more than I can even possibly imagine or articulate. Open mics, to me, they save lives. And being here tonight in this room is great because it kind of feels like an open mic. We didn't sign up, they called us. And that's cool, feels special. Must be doing something right. So this is a song I wrote called Much More Than an Open Mic. She sings, she writes, got a room, a business mind, but having dreams of chairs and tables, big loudspeakers, mics and cables. What if we add a little light? The world is dark sometimes, so we sing, we write, we came tonight. Much more than an open mic. We pay cover for our thoughts. Here we wear no mask. We sing, we dance, we fall in love. We need a fans, more than followers. This is fam, and we came tonight. Much more than an open mic. We came tonight. Much more than an open mic. They don't say our names when we die, but name us in the fight, and we came to sign our name and to get called in to the light. She is poetry. She cries. She smiles. Almost stated tonight. Where I'm from, we say 5,000. Maybe save a life. We came tonight. Much more than an open mic. We came tonight. Much more than an open mic.
Thank you so much for your beautiful music. I just want to remind you all that we're here at the Baltimore Museum of Industry, and we picked this theme, invisible labor, because So it feels like so much of what we're doing in our lives right now is invisible. We're in our homes, we're shut away, but also because we want to highlight the work that often is unsung, the work that happens out of the limelight, and the essential work, and the day-to-day work. And through our partnership with the Museum of Industry these past couple of years, we've had such wonderful time spotlighting the stories of work in Baltimore. And the museum is dedicated, of course. Here at the museum, there's all sorts of artifacts and really interesting objects from the past of work in Baltimore, but they are committed to focusing on work in the present and the future. And they're really, like so many institutions, they're struggling right now. And so we want to say thank you for registering for the show and supporting the museum that way. But if you feel so inclined and you would like to make a donation to the museum, that would also be most welcome. And if you want to come down to the museum campus in beautiful South Baltimore, there's a terrific collection of photographs and interviews of female steel workers that are on the outside fence. So if you're strolling around or you just want to, spend some time in the neighborhood, walk by, because it's the really terrific stories and photographs. Okay. So our next storyteller is Elijah McBride, who's a wonderful young man who I've just loved getting to know. That's one of the best parts of doing what Jessica and I do. We get to meet all these people and talk with them. And he's a graduate of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He planned to become a defense lawyer. He studied criminal justice, but then he did an internship with a school counselor, and he realized he was really interested in mental health. And so now he works as a hotline counselor at Baltimore Crisis Response Hotline, and he's here to share a story about what that work is like.
It's mid-May of earlier this year. For many of us, we're experiencing a pandemic, a global pandemic. Many of us are working from home or without jobs, without food and basic needs. But for me, I'm an essential worker. So our agency stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's a typical day for me. I pull up to our agency, I get out the car, make sure I have my wallet, my keys, and my mask. I put my gloves on, I speak to anyone in the parking lot, wave my hand, and I scan it with my badge. I fingerprint into our time clock, and I make my way downstairs to answer a series of questions. Where have you been? Have you knowingly been in touch with anyone that had COVID-19? I get my temperature checked, and I make my way up to the elevator. Going into the elevator, and let me say, the elevator music is pretty good this time. So I'm going into the elevator, and I go up to the third floor where our department is located, and I punch the numbers and the codes to get in. I grab my favorite mug and go get my coffee, 2 creams, 2 sugars, and I grab a little snack if one is available, and I sit down at my desk. I log into our database, and I wait for a call. Now, for me, calls ranges, so I can get anyone who's calling for trying to figure out when the trash is going to be picked up. They broke their lawnmower and they need a handyman or someone to come by to cut their lawn. Or even someone that has a gun to their head that's saying, you have 60 seconds to give me a reason to live. But this day I get a call, I pick up the phone, and for the sake of the story, I call her named Sarah. She was crying hysterically, going through, in my opinion, at the time, which was an anxiety attack. So I do our typical protocol, which is our breathing techniques. So I tell her to breathe in, to hold it, and to breathe out. I tell her to do it again. Breathe in, This time to hold it a little bit longer and then breathe out. After Sarah calms down, she goes on to tell me that she's a nurse in Baltimore and how she's been overwhelmed, overworked, and simply tired of living. She goes on to describe to me the hospital conditions, the lack of resources, the lack of ventilators, the lack of staff, the days she literally had to almost sleep in the hospital. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to all this. She also goes to describe me some of the faces of the patients she's dealt with, faces of anguish, pain, and faces of death. One conversation she did bring up was a conversation she had, and we'll call his name Matt. He was a 40-year-old husband and father of two. Never had any health conditions, but was clinging on to his life because of COVID-19. She said that he asked her a question. He said the question he asked her was he going to be okay? Was he going to make it? Well, Matt died 2 days later after that conversation. After she said that, I sat back. I was like, what am I going to say to this woman? I'm 23 years old. I'm about 6 months onto the job. My major is criminal justice. What am I going to say? So I sit back and I remember as a child, my grandfather always told me, son, it's one thing to hear something, but it's another thing to be listening to something. I said, okay. So I'm listening to her talk and she's telling me some more information. And she said, well, say something. So I said, well, don't worry, Sarah. I'm listening. Good thing is, she was able to calm down. We was able to set her up with some mental health resources, as we usually do. And we was able to, she had private insurance. We was able to see what insurance carrier she had to give her the correct information so she can get a therapist and some treatment. But the most important part in all of this is days, weeks, and months passed. And my supervisor came in. She said, hey, you know, you got someone called by the name of Sarah, and they wanted to say thank you. So again, the job that I do, a lot of times I have to switch my mindset because I can go from one call to a person needing this to another call with a person needing something that doesn't even have anything to do with the last call. So a lot of times I don't even remember the caller that I talked to by the end of the day. So I went into the database and I typed their information in and I saw her number and I decided to give her a call. So, hey, Sarah, and began to talk. And she said, thank you for listening to me that day. That's truly all I wanted. So that story really touched me in a way. I was 6 months onto the job. I was new to the whole field. But thanks to the agency, most of all, thanks to my grandfather, who's been deceased now for approximately 13 to 14 years, who told me the importance and showed me the importance of listening and providing a listening ear to people that need help. So what I say to you today, and what I say to everybody, this is a trying time, but always know that you have a listening ear. Our agency is here, and thank you so much for the story, and please, everyone, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. And again, that's the Baltimore Crisis Response. And if you or anybody you know is in need, you can call their hotline. Our next storyteller is Natasha Tylea, and she has been a sound engineer at Baltimore venues for about 20 years. She's also a touring engineer, and she's a blacksmith and a photographer and a single mom. So please welcome Natasha.
So I've been doing sound for over 2 decades. I've ran more than 5,000 shows, and each one of those shows has some nuance that I deal with of sexism pretty much every time I work. But I recalled one show recently, last winter, that encompasses, it's chock full of sexism and different dynamics I face every time I go to work. It was a winter night at Autobar, one of the 4 clubs I work in Baltimore. I show up like I normally do, going to work when everyone else is coming home from work, walking into a dark building. I open the door and I get overtaken by the wafty smell of last night's rock show and must and drunkenness, which I like. It kind of brings me into the zone that I need to be in. I power on the lights, power on the sound system, put on my favorite record for the week, because I have to listen to all my records on the best sound system in the city. So I start that ritual pretty much every night of my life. I used to before the pandemic anyway. So I'm going about my time in the club by myself, setting up the stage, bringing out all the mics and stands and cabling. I have no idea who's playing that night. I usually don't know, or half the time I don't know, so I go with it and I start setting up the normal needs. But as soon as I hear the banging on the door, the aggressive knocking, I pretty much understood what the night was going to entail by that force of knock. So I open the door and about 30 guys come in, all in different varying shades of black and with like last night's leftover makeup still on their faces. And I could tell, or I was told, but I could tell that it was a glam metal night with a touring package of 4 bands. I was to be mixing the last 3. They had a visiting engineer for the opening band, and that was the story. So I continue setting up the stage, bringing out more mics, setting up the way I normally do, and the tour manager, who's half my age, comes over to me and says, like, when's the sound guy gonna get here? I said, oh, I'm the sound guy. And he laughs. And then he realizes that I'm telling the truth. It's not a joke. And then he proceeds to explain all of what needs to go on as if like I'm 8 and I've never worked a show in my life, even though I've worked more shows than he's been alive. So I listen and I grin and bear it the way I always do, because they're my clients and I just have to smile at them and listen to them. So I continue setting mics, and random guys are coming up to me, since I'm still the only person from Ottawa working, asking me to make drinks or to fix the toilet, to replace the toilet paper, all these things that are clearly not a part of a sound person's job. So I follow through, I continue with my work and kind of ignore those things. But meanwhile, they're kind of making fun of the music I have on, which is just my sort of mellow electronic, like non-offensive music. They're like mocking it a lot. So they end up bringing out their big boombox and setting it in the middle of the Autobar floor and pumping a bunch of metal through it. I usually like to have calm music before a metal show, just so you sort of, keep your ears pristine, but I guess they just want to be all about it. So whatever, I just continue to smile and grin and bear it. So I get through the sound checks and begin to show the visiting engineer his way, or try to show him around the mixing console, but he sort of took the other sexist angle instead, is wanting to flirt and just talk about like, how he could come on to me and all these things. But I'm trying to just talk tech, and he doesn't really want to talk about that. So I leave him to be and let him just figure it out on his own. So we open the doors. It's a sold out show for some reason. And I find out later that there's only 3 women who paid that night. So it's about 375 dudes in the room, and you could smell it and feel it, which I'm used to. It's pretty much par for the course every night. So the opening band plays. The sound engineer is clearly a little lost, but he's a dude, so he should know what he's doing, right? So I let it go. And then I start to mix the 2 bands before the headliner. And the vocalist from the headliner stumbles into the booth at one point, the sound booth, and you can tell he's definitely drunk or on something. And he's kind of falling into me, and I can't really make out what he's saying, but the 2 words I could make out was loud and sexy. So whatever that means, I was supposed to take those notes and go with it. And then after mixing the 2 opening bands before the headliner, the original sound guy comes in, is just so surprised, and it's just like, that was great. You did such a great job, And this is a thing that happens to me a lot, where people are surprised that I did a great job. And I know that they wouldn't say that to a guy, but whatever, I'm used to that. So I just move forward like always and grin and bear it. And then the headliner starts, and so this is glam metal, so this involves a lot of falsetto, and you could see that this vocalist, this frontman, wasn't really fully, and he wasn't able to really pull it off like he normally does. He was also probably in his 50s, maybe a little past his prime with his falsetto. So usually what happens with that sort of insecurity, if people are insecure about their voice, they tend to ask for more volume. They want everything turned up. They think louder will hide something. So he's asking for more. As soon as he walks on the stage, before a note was played, he said, "Turn it up." And I'm like, well, we haven't started. So, okay, sure, I'll turn it up. But I'm definitely at the limit where I can't really turn it up much more, or else it's going to be nothing but feedback. So I turn it up as much as I can. He plays through a song. Can't really make those notes. It's all right, whatever, it's fine. But then he starts kind of yelling at me, I need more monitors, it's got to be louder on stage. I'm definitely pushing it way louder than I've ever had to push it. And so I make the motion that I'm doing it, but I don't, of course. And he goes through another song, and he still needs more. But it's just it's a thing I've noticed over the 20-some years. When, if you're uncomfortable with your own voice, you try to project it onto the sound person. It's always the sound person's fault. So I can pretty much be zen with this stuff and let it go through me. But it was getting to be a little too much because, all of the dudes in the audience are turning around and looking at me because they don't know any better. So he plays through the second song, still wanting it louder, runs off the stage. And then the opening engineer, the rookie-ish guy, comes over and says he would rather me mix. And usually, this has happened maybe twice in my career. I say no, and it's my club, my system, I'm staying here. But at this point, it was just over the top, and I didn't want to be there anyway. And so I decided to choose that battle, to walk away and let them fester in their own whatever that stuff is. So I decided just to let it be. And as I'm walking out, I quickly engage a compressor on the full system, on all the monitors, kind of like a governor, so that they can't really push it past the level that they want to, and so they can't blow any of my system. And I walk away. And as I walk outside, it's beautiful outside and crisp and clear air, and as the door slams behind me and all that noise goes away, I'm back into this peaceful place I was when I first walked into the club. And the contrast of the night air and all the clearness of that air versus the thickness of the sweat inside was jarring, but also the feedback I hear coming from inside was jarring. It sounded like the full rest of the set was nothing but feedback. You could hear the audience screaming a bit, like frustrated with the feedback or whatever. And I knew they weren't going to blow anything, so I was cool with it. I stayed outside. I waited until I heard no more noise and it was clearly over. And I walked back in, and there was a note on the console of the dude who was trying the other angle of sexism, trying to really compliment me and say, I did great work tonight, and we're really sorry for any hurt feelings if I felt any weird way. I've had a lot of these notes left where people are appreciating me after the fact. And as everyone leaves the building, I finally put back on my record, and everyone's gone, and I coil those cables super slowly, and I kind of come back in to my meditation of why I do this in the first place, and it's really just to listen to my own music on the system. Yeah, thanks. Wait.
Thanks, Natasha. That was a great story about our current president's band. Just kidding. It's just going to be my bit for the night. He doesn't have a band because he's not creative. All right, sorry. Okay, enough about politics. Our final storyteller for the evening. Thank you so much for being with us for this wonderful evening, is Kat Chamberlain. And so Kat is many things. Kat's a physician who is the medical director not only at an opioid treatment center in Baltimore, but also is the medical director for the convention center field house that was opened up to deal with COVID, which, by the way, I just got tested there, and you guys did an awesome job, just like in and out. Kat also, what else? You loved smoked meats, the Dallas Cowboys for reasons unimaginable, and Star Wars for reasons quite imaginable. Kat and her beloved family live in Hamden, and she's going to share the last story with you tonight. Please welcome Kat Chamberlain.
So during the summer, every Friday night, I would work 24 hours straight. I would go to my primary care office, I'd see about 30 patients, and then rush to pick my child up at the YMCA, which did a fabulous job for social distancing. From there, I would go home, spend about an hour with my wife, and then I would head to work. During that hour, most likely our neighbors would come over and they would have, or we would have, a social distancing happy hour. They got to drink cold beers. I got to chug hot coffee in the middle of 90-degree heat in Baltimore to get caffeinated for the rest of the night. After this, I would jump on 83, head straight downtown to the Baltimore Convention Center, which is our field hospital for COVID patients. It's an agreement with the state, with Hopkins and University of Maryland. So I don't know if all of you have ever been into the convention center, but if you have, the exhibit hall, which is downstairs, is one big, huge room, and there are no windows. Back in April, the Army Corps of Engineers came in, they put up some temporary walls, they did some magic with the HVAC system, which makes it negative pressure, meaning COVID virus stays in the hospital and doesn't get spread out. They also built rooms, and we have a fully functioning pharmacy, even a snack bar and a lounge for patients. So on this random Friday night, I do what I always do, see patients, pick up my kid, chug coffee, jump on 83 and head downtown. So the field hospital is on the lower level, and there's like, I don't know, 2.5 stories of stairs to go down, but there's also an escalator. So I'm gonna get on the escalator to go down. In order to get into the field hospital, you have to go through an antechamber, a room that I'm going to put on all of my PPE. So when you go through this antechamber, you walk in and you first have to scrub your hands with hand sanitizer, and then you wait 20 seconds. Then you put on a pair of gloves, and then you sanitize your hands again. You have to wait another 20 seconds. From there, you're going to put on your gown, and then wash your hands again and wait another 20 seconds. From that point, you're going to put on your N95 respirator and your face shield, hand sanitize your hands again and wait another 20 seconds. Then I'm going to put on my second pair of gloves, and then you guessed it, sanitize my hands and wait another 20 seconds. After that, I'm going to spin around and my spotter is going to check to make sure I'm fully covered, and then I'm going to walk in. When you walk into the field hospital, it is a big open area, and just like every other COVID unit, it is isolating. Patients can't leave the hospital to go smoke cigarettes. Family members can't come visit. All of us are dressed in this PPE, personal protective equipment, from head to toe, and all patients can see are our eyeballs. So I go in, and on this particular Friday night, I'm going to meet this patient, John, for the first time, and John has given me permission to talk about his story. John is a 40-year-old male, and he's actually also an essential employee. He works at a hospital in the food service industry. So I go to talk to him and hear his story, and he tells me that he got sick maybe a week ago. He thinks he got it from work at the hospital, but he's not sure. He was hospitalized 3 days before he came to us, and his lungs are pretty damaged already. He's already on oxygen, and this is a grown man who can't walk more than 20 yards without becoming short of breath and needing to stop and take a break. He tells me that his mom is a little bit sick, and his sister, who he lives with, might be sick too. He's not for sure. Well, I finish up with him, take his vitals, do what I need to do, and go on with the rest of my evening. The next morning, I leave around 6 or 7 in the morning, and in order to leave the field hospital, I have to go through 3 rooms. The first room I go in, first I knock on the door, I'm let in. I'm going to go, and if you haven't already guessed it, I'm going to sanitize my hands and wait for 20 seconds. Then I'm going to take off my first set of gloves, sanitize my hands, wait another 20 seconds. Then I'm going to take off my gown, throw it away, sanitize my hands, wait 20 more seconds. After that, I can take off this second pair of gloves, sanitize my hands, and wait 20 seconds. After that, I'm going to go into a second room. From there, I'm going to actually sanitize my hands and then put on a new pair of gloves, sanitize my hands again, and at that point I can take off my N95 respirator, my face shield. I will clean my face shield and I'll put both of them in a brown bag. I will sanitize my hands yet again, take off those gloves, sanitize my hands again, put on my face mask. From there I'm going to go to a third room. At that room, I am actually going to be able to wash with water and soap my hands. I can also take a shower if I want. At that point, I'm allowed to finally leave the field hospital. As I drive home, I get on 83, I see the signs thanking me for being an essential worker. I get home, I crash for a few hours. The next Friday night, same thing. Go to work, see patients, pick kid up, drink lots of coffee, head down 83, sanitize my hands 1,000 times, put on 2 pairs of gloves, my gown, my face mask, my respirator, and I get to go in. This time around, though, I'm hearing some bad news about John. John just found out his mother died. I get myself together and I go talk to John, hear his story. John tells me his mother died of COVID at a hospital alone, far away. His sister is also sick, and his sister is hospitalized. His 12-year-old nephew, who he lives with, is also COVID positive and is alone. He's asymptomatic and he's at home. His neighbors are checking on this 12-year-old boy who is alone while the rest of the family is hospitalized. John's still on oxygen, and I ask him, why are you still here? We can get you oxygen. I can get insurance to pay for oxygen. I can figure that out. I can get you home to be with your family. He tells me he wants to stay because to him, his mother means strength. He needs to get strong so he can go home to his family. He needs to get strong so he can be there for the rest of his community, his family, and his sister. I look on his wall and there's pictures of his family. He gave the nurse permission to get on Facebook to print off pictures of his family so he wouldn't be as alone or isolated. At that point, I tried my best not to cry, but here's the deal. Tears are going to roll up in my eyes. And because everything in the COVID hospital, the hot zone, is considered infected with COVID, I can't touch my eyes. I just have to let the tears drop down my N95. I thank him for his story. I promise him we're going to do everything we can to get him home as quick and as safely as possible. Next morning, I leave. Same thing. I wash my hands 1,000 times. I take off my gloves. I jump on 83 and I see the signs thanking me for being an essential worker. And to be honest, that makes me feel good. I go home, I crash. The next Friday night, You guessed it, same thing. See 30 patients, go pick up my kid, go home, my wife and friends get to have cold beers and I get to chug hot coffee. Go down to the field hospital and I hear some good news. John is doing better. He's off oxygen. He's going to be home soon. So I go to see him and I'm listening to him and doing my work for the evening. He's thanking me for my services. And of course, it's my absolute pleasure. But he tells me he's never going to remember me. He met way too many people. He's not going to remember my name, which is fine. He's never going to recognize me because he's only ever seen my eyes. So he brings out his Bible and he asks me to sign his Bible, which means such a great deal to me. So I thanked him for his time here and allowing us to be a part of his recovery. That next morning, I go home like I always do. I sanitize my hands 1,000 times, take off my PPE, get into my car and head up 83. I see the signs thanking me for being an essential worker. But there's a lot of people we need to be thanking right now. There's a lot of unsung and invisible heroes during this COVID crisis. Let's say, for example, John's neighbors. They went to check on this boy who was alone, whose grandmother just died, whose mother's in the hospital, whose uncle is in the hospital. They put themselves at risk to help out this child. Thank you. How about those patients who aren't sick enough to go into the hospital, but who are locking the door and quarantining themselves in their own house so not to infect the rest of their family? Those are also heroes during all of this. And just like John, who chose to self-isolate by himself, not by himself, but alone at this field hospital. He was not just physically alone, physically separated from his family, but he was also emotionally and mentally alone as well. But he did that because he knew it was the best thing for him to get better for his family. He knew he needed to do that to protect his family, to protect his community, to protect our society from COVID. Look, we're all in this together and we can get through this together, but we all have to do what we need to do. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Kat. Thank you to all the storytellers. Thank you to you all watching wherever you are out there in the internets. Thanks to the Museum of Industry, Beth Maloney and Ani. Thank you so much. Thanks to Maryland Sound. Thanks to the video. I'm sorry, I'm going to come back for that. And we're going to have a song from Queen Earth. Thank you.
No.
I just want to thank Maryland Sound again, Constellation, which is a sponsor, and Pablo Casari of Control Video. Obviously, without the sound and the video, we could not be doing this. So thank you, 1,000 thank yous. And now Queen Earth.
Thank you. I'm going to close with my hit single. It's called What If. I wrote this song 10 years ago. I was working at a college in Towson and knew that my contract was going to end and that there was something bigger out there for me. And this song always comes back to me because the life of an artist is unconventional and COVID has impacted a lot of us in different ways. And I'm one of those people that wears 7 hats and COVID took like 4 of them. So then I built some more hats and I'm just figuring it out. And I have a writing student that I work with and he's trying to BS a BS artist, if you will. And I had to call him out on it the other day. And I said, listen, buddy, I said, I know it's hard right now because you want to be in school with your friends and you're struggling. I said, but think about it this way. In like 10 years, all the people who do awesome stuff during this time when they're telling us that we can't and that we shouldn't, so those are the people that we're going to remember. I said, so what kind of person do you want to be? So I hope he did his homework. And on Saturday, we don't have to have another conversation like that. But this is What If for all the dreamers. told you how to love, how to live. What if you just did? What if you just did? Suppose nobody told you there was a closet to be in, no walls to hold you there, and no bars to jail you in. What if, what if, what if you just did? What if you listened to those voices when everyone was away? Suppose nobody told you what to think, how to love, what was dangerous, told you what was safe. Imagine if you made your own way, a trail you would blaze. They'd accuse you of red and blue, bipolar, purple haze. They said your world is colored and they keep only for you. And the dreamers who can't see because we walk it in our day. Imagination never had to be a stage for grammar school recitals. Those were just practice for the game, entitled to try or rerun. If I turn too many one day eyes that I haven't done yet, too many shots I didn't take. What if nobody told you how to love, how to live? What if you just did? What if you just did? What if we can't judge each other by the color of our skin? What if you could look inside my eyes, see the child within? Could we let go of this hatred so we can start again? Stand together, form a movement, let the love begin. I believe this can be. I believe it starts with you and me. 'Cause this ain't what if, this ain't what if. We can do this, we can do this, come on. What if nobody told you how to love, how to live? What if you just did? What if you just did? Suppose nobody told you there was a closet to be in, no walls to hold you there, and no bars to jail you in. What if, what if, what if you just did? Suppose nobody told you there was a closet to be in, no walls to hold you there, and no bars to jail you in. What if, what if, what if